No, we have all this, we have all this stuff about the policy committee.
We're
Yeah.
gonna table, it's all gonna get tabled, Mr. Sands.
Table Ted because of the executive order.
Yep,
That
we're on.
Okay,
Good evening. It is Monday, March 8th. This is the Guilford, Connecticut Board of Education. I would like to start the meeting by inviting you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
allegiance
to the flag
Flag
of the
United
United
States
States
of
of
America,
America,
and to
and
the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands, one nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for all.
all.
Go
All right.
Grizzlies.
Thank you. So the first, before we actually go into the first item or the next item on the agenda, I would like to ask the board to add to the agenda an act on item. The Board of Finance did vote on our proposed Board of Education budget last Thursday evening. And they voted to reduce it by $50,000. So I would like to add an item on the agenda tonight and ask for a motion to add 9.4 to act on the Board of Finance reduction to the proposed Board of Education budget. Is there a
So-
motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sands and Mrs. Sullivan. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, terrific. So that will be 9.4 on the agenda tonight. What that does mean is if we have a public joining us to comment on the agenda, that is an item that they may comment on. The next item then on the agenda is going to be action on minutes. We have 4 sets of minutes on the listed on the agenda. I am going to ask the board that we hold on the minutes of February 22nd and February 25th because we do need to make some adjustments to accurately reflect what happened in those meetings. So I am then going to ask for a motion to accept the minutes of February 1st, 2021. Mr. Del Ventura, thank you first. Ms. Rader second. Are there any comments or corrections on these minutes? I had just one correction on page 4, the very last paragraph. Dr. Balistraci, I think that word should be commented instead of commended. All right, any other comments or corrections? All in favor of accepting these corrected minutes? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? No. All right, so those pass. The next minutes are those of Monday, February 8th. Is there a motion to accept the February 8th meeting minutes? Mr. Sands, thank you. Dr. Vesta, second. Are there any comments or corrections on these minutes? I just had one, which is really for clarification. On page 4, towards the bottom, there is the 3 bulleted list of further recommendations to our budget. In the paragraph preceding, it notes that we needed to decrease by $58,000 to get below or to a 1.49% increase. The third bullet, if it could read an additional $10,000 from retirement savings instead of 80. 80 is the total reduction taken, but the board moved to add an additional 10,000 reduction.
That's correct.
Good catch.
Any other corrections or comments? All right. All in favor of a corrected approval of the February 8th meeting minutes? Aye. Any objections or abstentions? All right. Terrific. Next, number 4, public forum for topics on the board agenda. If there is anyone who would like to speak to the board on topics of the board agenda, I think they put their name and address in the Q&A at the bottom of the screen. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. So I'm going to give anyone a moment who chooses to do so.
Dr. Balistraci, I am seeing nobody queuing up to comment to the board this evening.
Okay. Terrific. We will then move on to number 5 of the agenda, which is review and approval of expenditures for the month of February. And I'm going to ask Mr. Golino to provide that review.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Balistraci. So I had a great meeting with Linda last week, and we went over the expenditures for the February 2020 financial reports. So the expenditures for the month of February were $4,759,072.43. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of February were 63.29% of the budget as compared to 61.5% in the prior year. Revenue for the month of February of 2020 was $4,973, which does include $3,984 from Medicaid and $989 for pre-K tuition. Employee benefits, the percent of the budget expended is higher than the prior year. And under purchase services, the percent of the budget expended is lower than the prior year. The credit in the electricity line reflects payment from ZREC credit from CLMP of approximately $26,589. The credit is in the postage line, and it's a refund of an overpayment for postage and meter leases. Tuition of the budget, the percent of budget in the tuition line expended is higher than the prior year. Due to the excess cost grant received was not reflected in this month's budget. So that's the understanding and what I understand it to be why it's higher. The COVID line, the balance of the coronavirus relief fund grant is $289.36 has been received. Funds from the ESSER grant of $24,513 have also been received. And then we reviewed the warrants, and in total, all the payments for the month have been listed alphabetically in the paperwork we all received. The total of payments listed in the warrants is $2,146,560.05. That's pretty much nothing really was unusual in reviewing the monthly expenditures. And I'm available for any questions or comments from my colleagues.
Thank you, Mr. Golino. And I will note we did spend time in the operations committee, which met just prior to this meeting, going over these expenses in detail. But per Mr. Golino's invitation, is there anyone else on the board who has questions or comments? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Golino. Can I ask that is a motion to accept the expenditures for February 2021? Mr. Del Ventura, first, thank you. Moira, a second. All in favor? Any objections or abstentions? All right. So that is an approval of the February 2021 financial reports. Thank you, Mr. Golino. Next up is communications. I do know that we received what I counted, I believe, 12 emails received in the last few days, I believe, since the Board of Finance voted on the budget. Per my review, one of the emails asked us to maintain understanding that the art teachers were put in at the same in our proposed budget at the same time that two world language positions were taken out at the elementary level, but that individual asked us to maintain that change, particularly the addition of the art teachers. The other 11 comments were in support of the equity position and the teacher residency program. And a large number of them were also asking us to maintain the high school social work position. So these were all emails in response to the fact that we are charged with reducing the budget tonight by 50,000, and these were requests to not touch those positions. Are there any of my colleagues who had additional communications that they wanted to report tonight? All right, hearing none, we will go to the student representative report. Julia is with us tonight. Hi, Julia, welcome. And we look forward to your report.
Great. So I also took Jerry's schools for today. So we'll be at Long Beach School and to give Guilford High School in way of Eden Song and in an effort to spread kindness throughout GHS and the Guilford community. The Interact Club has launched a kindness campaign where QR codes have been posted around the school and online to assign different acts of kindness for each week. The Interact Club wants to remind everyone to spread kindness today and every day. And from Monday, March 8th through Friday, March 19th, the Student Senate and Action Against Hunger Club are teaming up to hold.
Did we lose her?
Julia, your audio's lagging. If you try turning off your video, it might help you, us to be able to hear you more clearly.
For their exams in May. Additionally, after a session that opened 110 interested students, over 60 sophomores submitted an application to participate in the IB program for their junior and senior years. Students are now sitting for their IB interviews with Mr. Buno, the program coordinator. And finally, for GHS, over the month of February, we conducted Aaron's Law Sexual Assault Prevention webinars, one for each graduating class, and the presentations were created and conducted by Jennifer Wenderoth Holster of Let It Be Heard in partnership with Guilford Youth and Family Services. Movement Adams, excited and ready to welcome students to school for 4 days after nearly 1 year of the pandemic. The Adams Peer Helpers held a food gift card / food drive this past month, and proceeds went to the Guilford Food Bank. The Anti-Bias, Anti-Racism Group, or ABAR, I think that's how you say it, met with the Adams faculty and the Adams PTO this past month. The group looks forward to a partnership with the Adams community to further inclusion, equity, and tolerance. The annual Iron Giraffe Challenge is
Oh, Julia, we've lost your audio feed. Is it possible to turn off your camera and just use the audio?
students are fundraising to help drill water wells in South Sudan, and they are participating in the readathon to raise funds for this effort. 8th graders are in ELA and social studies classes working on joint research projects around an argumentative speech. Sorry, my mic just dropped for a second. And then after that, the Adams 8th graders participated in their first GHS presentation about the transition to high school. The future class of 2025 met with representatives from the high school to begin their course selection. For Baldwin, every morning, students participate in a class period dedicated to enrichment activities. They're non-graded, self-directed.
Oh, no.
Well, that didn't help too much, did it?
The most powerful learning for our kids takes place during this time. Our 5th grade students have just completed a social issues unit in language arts. In this unit, students selected and read books that have themes that touched on challenging issues like fitting in, bullying, learning and physical disabilities, and facing fears. In 6th grade, students are currently involved The unit culminates with students to prepare and deliver their own speeches about what it means to be a learner. Moving on to the elementary schools. At Guilford Lakes, Nick Bruhl, the author of the Bad Kitty books, visited students via a webinar in the last week of February, where he created a workshop demonstrating how he illustrates his novels. Students were asked about their favorite part of learning through a pandemic with responses such as, when I wear my mask outside, it keeps my face warm, and having Chromebooks. Plus, we learned so many new games. Lakes is also looking for some volunteers to join their anti-bias, anti-racist initiative. Their vision is to create a collaborative partnership.
Julia?
Enjoyed a virtual field trip with the Mystic Seaport Museum. The program, titled Pattern of Change, helps students understand the organization of our solar system, galaxy, and universe. The Jones PTO held a family bingo night on Zoom, and students had their families download bingo boards, and Ms. Hahn was hosting 78 Zoom screens. It was so much fun. To celebrate Read Across America Day, Jones also had a virtual visit with Nick Bruhl, the author of Bad Kitty. They also participated in additional reading activities using a choice board created by Jones Library Media Specialist. Many Jones staff members have started to get vaccinated and are grateful to everyone who has been making that happen. At A.W. Cox, students recognized Read Across America Day on March 2nd with a virtual author visit as well. After reading a chapter from Nick Bruhl's newest book, Bad Kitty Goes on Vacation, he demonstrated his drawing techniques to them as well. Students in kindergarten, first and second grade continued to work through a structured approach to build a foundation for reading. Whole class, small group, and individual instructional opportunities focus on the key skills to improve as a reader and as a writer. In art, kids in all grades are learning about the artist Wayne Taboyd, who used colorful sweet treats like cakes, candy, and ice cream as the object of his artwork. And Officer Anthony Martone, Guilford School Resource Officer, recently visited 3rd and 4th grade classrooms to present an internet safety lesson based on the SMART model. Stay safe, don't meet up online, accepting files can cause problems, check that information is reliable, and tell an adult if worried or uncomfortable. Based on information that students shared about their online activities, we have to develop a presentation for parents and caregivers. And finally, for LEAT, students and staff dressed as favorite book characters. It was amazing to see the remote and in-person learnings, as well as the staff members dressed in their costumes with smiling faces. Each grade level had a community reader visiting via Zoom. Guest readers included Dr. Freeman, Mr. Ross, Mr. Hamill, Detective Dan Morrell, Officer Anthony Martone, and a firefighter of Guilford, and Principal Slowly. Special all-school guest reader was musician Nick Fradiani. Everyone was super thrilled to have Nick Fradiani in on their reading activities. Drop everything and read. Each grade level chose a time today to drop everything and just read. They dressed in comfy clothes or pajamas. They were grateful to receive the presentation from Officer Martone in 3rd and 4th grade on internet safety as well. And on Wednesday, Calvin Leet will host their monthly PTO meetings where teachers, principal, and student council.
Excellent. Julia, thank you. Julia, if, and only if, you already have what you just read to us in like a series of notes or bullets, if you wouldn't mind sending that to Ms. Chaff, who can distribute it to the board, because we're so interested in hearing all that the school is doing, all the schools are doing, and no fault of your own. Sometimes you were coming in and out a little bit. If you do not have it in notes, I am not asking you to do any additional work. But if you just happen to have it, and it doesn't have to be fancy or prettied up, just we'd love to hear.
Yeah, I can do that.
That would be
Sure.
terrific. Thank you, and thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Julia.
Terrific. All right, Dr. Freeman, I'm going to turn over to you for the superintendent's report.
Thank you. And I'm going to note in advance that I have a extremely short report this evening. I do want to start, however, by sharing the good news around our COVID vaccination clinics. So in the last 8 days, beginning on March 1st, the first day that educators were open to receive vaccinations, over the past 8 days across 3 locally stood up clinics, we have at the end of business today vaccinated 400 of our Guilford Public Schools employees. First doses. That leaves us with fewer than 200 employees left on our list to continue to roll the vaccines out to. Now, there's a quirk in how the vaccines are being distributed. We do not know until about the middle of the week when we will have or how many vaccines we will have to then organize for what so far have been Saturday and then Monday clinics for us here in the Guilford Public Schools. So 400 is a great number. We are excited about how many people we have been able to vaccinate so far. And we will know later this week whether we complete all of our staff members with the first dose next week or whether it needs to extend slightly beyond that. I do want to thank Sonia Marino, our town health director, and Pam Nellaber, our nursing director, and Elisa Bryant, who was a health aide in the system who has stepped up to be our vaccination coordinator for all the work that they have put into organizing that distribution. Also want to thank the East Shore Health District and particularly our local Guilford Fire Department and EMT support. They have been fantastic in distributing the vaccines right out of the community center here in Guilford. So that is enormously good news. We're really excited about that opportunity to roll those out. And again, we should be finished, if not next week, then the week after with first doses to all of our school employees. School employees is exactly what it sounds like. I know that oftentimes people shorthand this to be vaccines for teachers. These are vaccinations for all of our employees, including the before and after care programs and the bus drivers assigned to Guilford. It is all individuals who work in our buildings or with our students. Again, we're really excited about that. The only
That's
other
terrific. I mean, I want to give anyone a chance to comment. I'm thrilled at how many school staff have already been vaccinated. I think we were concerned it might take the whole month, and certainly with the caveats you explained that we're on track for finishing much sooner, which is terrific. Any other comments or questions on this agenda item?
I would just
Do you-
add.
do you have,
Sorry, I've just received some personal texts and emails from friends who work in the district who are like elated that this came to be, and they're so impressed with how quickly it's happening. So it's just nice to hear.
do we have, do our employees have dates for their second shot?
So actually, there's a clarifying email going out to staff members. We know the dates for the second rounds. We are not sure right now if we're going to continue to do those independently through a Guilford clinic at the Guilford Community Center, or if it will collapse into larger shared clinics structured through East Shore. So the quick answer is that the individuals who went through today did not leave with the second date on their card. We need to clarify that and we will confirm that. But the numbers are small enough that we will be confirming dates and locations with every individual, anybody who doesn't have such a confirmation at this time. There are doses set aside. Every first dose that we received comes with a guaranteed second dose. We just need to confirm location primarily.
Okay, terrific. Any other questions or comments? I guess we go on to the next item. Go ahead.
The next item, again, is short and a little bit of good news. Julia did beat me to this particular punch. I do want to remind the board and remind the community that a week from today, on Monday, March 15th, we are still on track to be opening Guilford High School and Adams Middle School to all students coming to school 4 days a week. So we will be dropping the cohort A and B hybrid. All students will be coming to schools on Monday and Tuesday, and then again on Thursday and Friday. For the time being, we will be continuing to hold Wednesday as a distance learning day while we move through this change and continue to move forward. Again, very excited to be opening schools. I did drop into the clinic earlier this afternoon, and one of the first comments that a teacher had for me was how exciting it was to be there receiving her vaccination and how excited everyone is to have all students back in school starting on Monday. So again, good news. We are continuing to monitor. We'll continue to keep an eye on this, but we are excited to be able to have students back 4 days a week.
Terrific. Comments or questions about this item? It is something that we've talked about several times over the last month, but terrific. I think we have heard from a number of parents over the last few months that it was harder and harder for students to be in the hybrid model. We needed to do it for obvious reasons of safety, but it's nice to be at a point where we feel like we can bring them back 4 days a week. So that's terrific.
And after all the recent budget work and special meetings and Board of Finance meetings that you've all been joining in the last several weeks, I'm happy to offer you a brief report tonight.
Yes, terrific. All right. We are up to the board agenda. 9.1 is to receive for possible action the healthy food certification. Each board member has in their packet, I believe it's an 8-page document which spells out the healthy food certification. This is something we do every year. We did get a report from during our operations committee meeting that there is a question about how this will play out this past year given the pandemic, but we fully expect to be able to participate this coming year. But before I ask for motions, are there questions about this healthy food certification or any questions that came from reading the insert? All right, hearing none, I'm going to ask, we need to do this in 2 motions. I'm going to ask first for a motion that we participate in the healthy food certification program for next year. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mrs. Pack. Second, Mr. Sands. Any further questions about the participation? No. All right, so I'm going to call a vote. All in favor? Aye. All right. I see all hands raised. The second is I'm gonna read what we have to make a motion for and then ask for the motion. We will certainly, if Terry doesn't have already, provide this for the minutes. But the motion will be as follows. And this is related to food exemptions as part of this healthy food certification. Again, the board motion and final board approving minutes must include the following specific criteria for the food exemption required by the Connecticut General Statute, Section 1021(5)(f). Food exemptions. The Board of Education will allow the sale to students of food items that do not meet the Connecticut nutrition standards, provided that the following conditions are met. Number 1, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. Number 2, the sale is at the location of the event. And number 3, the food items are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. The school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day, and location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the food sales. So with that, I'm going to ask someone to essentially make that motion. Thank you, Mrs. Sullivan. Is there a second to that motion? Dr. Best? Any questions about that specifically? No. All right. All in favor? Okay, I see all hands, but I'll ask any objections or abstentions. No. Terrific. So both of those motions pass.
And Dr. Balistraci, if I may, and I apologize, I skirted over this during operations.
Okay.
On page 5 of 8 is a parallel exemption for beverage sales. May I ask the board to go through the same process and accept the exemption for beverage sales as well?
Absolutely. Again, I will read it. We will certainly provide it for the minutes. So I will be asking for a motion for the following criteria for the food exemptions required by Connecticut General Statute, Section 1022 LQ 1Q, sorry, 221Q. Beverage exemptions. The Board of Education will allow the sale to students of beverages not listed in Section 10-221Q of the Connecticut General Statutes, provided that the following conditions are met. Number one, the sale is in connection with an event occurring after the end of the regular school day or on the weekend. Number two, the sale is at the location of the event. And number three, the beverages are not sold from a vending machine or school store. An event is an occurrence that involves more than just a regularly scheduled practice, meeting, or extracurricular activity. The school day is the period from midnight before to 30 minutes after the end of the official school day. And location means where the event is being held and must be the same place as the beverage sales. So may I have someone volunteer to make that motion? Mr. Sands, thank you. Second, Dr. Hirsch. Any further conversation? All right, all in favor? Okay, it looks like I have approval across the board. Okay, so that has been accepted as well. Thank you, Dr. Freeman, for that addition. All right, number 9.2 is to receive for possible action a request to waive graduation community service. Dr. Freeman, are you going to provide us with that information?
Only insofar as to remind the board that we made this exemption last year after the shutdown in March affected the end of the school year. And again, this is a result of the impact that the pandemic has been having on our students' access to community service opportunities. With that, I will just turn it over to Mrs. Chaff to ask if she has any more detail to add to this request.
We did a quick review of where the seniors are in this process, and upwards of 70% of them have not been able to complete their community service hours. And so I think that alleviating this requirement would remove quite a bit of stress from their shoulders. And obviously, I think it's due to no fault of their own. I think if they had the opportunities available, they would have completed the community service credit, or excuse me, this community service requirement.
Thank you. It certainly sounds reasonable to me. And I must say, every month when we listen to the student representatives report on the numerous activities that happen throughout our schools each month, in terms of reaching out to others, raising funds for others, doing things for others. This is an unusual exception, but certainly one warranted under the conditions. This is I've always been proud of the school system in the amount of reaching out to others that happens, but certainly appreciate the need for this request. I'm going to ask for a motion that we waive the graduation community service for this year. Is there a motion? Dr. Best, second. Mrs. Peck, any questions or comments? All right, all in favor? All right. Okay, any objections or abstentions? No. Okay, so that is a unanimous approval to waive that community service for this year.
That will mean a lot to our students. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. The last thing we need is to be adding stress to a group that has gone through the year that they have gone through. 9.3, receive recommendations from the policy committee. I'm going to turn over to Mrs. Rader.
Thank you, Dr. Balistrisi. We were prepared tonight per the agenda to recommend from the policy committee to the full board some revisions and some new policies and new regulations. There are actually 6 items on our agenda, but today we learned that the President of the United States issued an executive order. I'll just read the title: Executive Order on Guaranteeing an Educational Environment Free from Discrimination on the Basis of Sex, including sexual orientation or gender identity. And it specifically goes on to call upon the Secretary of Education our own Miguel Cardona, to, within the next 100 days, review this policy and statute that is a holdover from the previous administration. And the anticipation is that there will be some sizable changes made to it, which will then transfer down to the state and the local level. So at this time, we are not going to be moving forward with presenting these policies as set forth in the agenda, and ask that we review this at another time when we have more information as to how the policy should be, the language and the structure, and what the constitutional statute will be.
Terrific. That makes perfect sense. And thank you for being so on top of things as they are late and breaking.
I was
So
kind of anticipated this, Jason
Right.
and I, but we, the timing was a little fortuitous. So we'll just, and our next policy meeting will be in April
Okay.
24th. So hopefully by that time, we'll maybe have a little bit more information and can start to readdress these policies and regulations.
Terrific. All right. So that will actually bring us then to 9.4, which is the item that we actually added to the agenda at the beginning of this meeting, which is to act on the Board of Finance reduction to our proposed Board of Education budget. So to briefly recap, Dr. Freeman and I presented the budget, our proposed budget, at a public forum on last Monday evening, Tuesday evening.
Tuesday.
I'm sorry, so many meetings. And the Board of Finance met again on Thursday evening and deliberated on both the Board of Education and Board of Selectmen or town budgets. Their final decision was to vote to reduce both the town or Board of Selectmen's budget and the Board of Education budget by $50,000. Just for information to the public, the Board of Finance is obviously completely within their power to make such a reduction. However, they cannot tell the Board of Education where that reduction comes from. So this comes back to us as a decision this evening, so that we now need to make considerations about where we would want that $50,000 reduction to come from. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Freeman. I imagine he has done some considering about this possibility, and then want to open it up to discussion of the whole board. Dr. Freeman?
Thank you, Dr. Balistraci. I do want to start by acknowledging the work of the Board of Finance and appreciating their support for our budget. I heard broad appreciation and support from the Board of Finance for the work that this Board of Education put into a budget that both strives to meet the needs of our students, which is our mission, it's what we're here for, but also to be aware of and to recognize the difficult financial situation that many of our residents and many taxpayers in the town are experiencing. The reduction of $50,000, I think, is recognition of the fact that this board brought forward a reasonable and responsible budget. I believe that the Board of Finance is making those fairly limited reductions in an effort to keep tax increases at the town level below 1%, at or below 1%. So I certainly understand their impetus to do that. I also really want to appreciate the community members who have come out to the budget process as you, the Board of Education, were working through this budget. We had large numbers of people who came out and participated at our meetings and at our public hearings. The numbers of people who came out and commented at the Board of Finance meetings, both Tuesday and Thursday of last week, and then again to the emails that the board members and I received that Dr. Balistraci summarized earlier today. I really do appreciate the involvement and the investment that the community members have put into this process this year. I do have a simple recommendation for the board in absorbing this $50,000 reduction. At this point, the salary line in front of us includes, and this was mentioned earlier as we looked at the minutes, the salary line in this budget currently assumes an $80,000 reduction based on retirement savings, that we will experience some number of more experienced, more veteran teachers who retire out of the system. And when we hire in less experienced teachers, that there is a savings associated with that. $80,000 is a fairly conservative number. I am going to suggest that the entire $50,000 reduction be added to that retirement savings, so that the total number would go from $80,000 to $130,000 of predicted retirement savings. This would assume approximately 4 retirements in areas of certification where we are not experiencing shortage areas around the state of Connecticut, and would therefore have the opportunity to hire, again, some less experienced teachers, but from a healthy pool of participants into those positions. So again, my recommendation would be to add that $50,000 reduction to the $80,000 reduction that is already identified as retirement savings. It would require the board to make no other adjustments to this budget, and we would then have a finalized budget. And Linda, could you, for purposes of the motion, share with us what the final dollar amount and percent increase would be after absorbing that additional $50,000 reduction?
Sure. Get to the bottom of the page. So with the $50,000 reduction, that would bring the budget to $62,395,900, or a 1.41% increase.
All right, so Mrs. Peck, I see your hand raised. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Dr. Freeman, can you talk a little bit about if we've got teachers retiring? Let's say we've got a math teacher who's a very experienced math teacher. He or she is retiring. With us reducing the amount there, does that require that we're then hiring only entry-level teachers? Like, what if we want to replace a very experienced math teacher with another very experienced math teacher? Like, can you just talk to me a little bit about how we hire new people to fill retired positions?
Yes. So this savings is going to assume that of the retirements that we experienced this year, that at least 4 of them would fall into certification areas where we've got really competitive pools, and we would be willing to hire a less experienced candidate. So often when we hire to replace, in any given year, we may hire from 25, I think 36 was one of the highest freshman classes of new hires that we brought in. So of 20 or 25 hires this year, some of those will be because of retirements and replacements. As long as 4 of them fell into certification areas where we draw really competitive pools, and those areas would be in places like elementary certification, K through 6 certification, English language arts certification, social studies certification. In all of those areas, for every vacancy that we post, we receive between 100 and 200 applications. With a pool like that, you could assume that somebody who's retiring out at the very top teacher salary, we would be able to hire somebody with only 3 or 4 years of experience, and that generates the kind of savings that we're talking about. In areas like world language, special education, math, science, we often don't go to that lowest extreme when we're hiring to fill those positions. In some of the more specialized positions, or again, in positions where we are experiencing shortage areas, we may have a less deep pool and we may need to hire with experience. So it really becomes that overall, and the idea of experiencing 4 such retirements where we could generate that savings is not at all out of our normal experience in a given school year. We would expect to recognize that.
Dr. Hirsch, go ahead.
We received a number of emails in the last few days with people who were pleased with the budget with regard to social worker and equity, and clearly didn't want us to take away from there. And we're not doing that here. But in the worst case scenario, if in fact we don't get the savings that we're anticipating to make the savings, can we assure those people that we'll come back and not deal with those two positions in terms of getting rid of them. That is, we have alternative ways of saving that kind of money.
Yes. So, right, I have very much appreciated the support that we have heard around student social emotional well-being, student mental health, and students being supported regardless of how they identify. So we are, by making this reduction in this area, we are saying that we can absorb it in the salary line, which is an exceptionally large line. In addition to retirement savings, there are other ways that we can manage that line to make sure we would not in August say that we were unable to generate the retirement savings, therefore we need to go back and unfill these positions that we planned for. And that would also apply to the technology position that is in this budget as well. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, that's a really important clarification. Are there other discussion? I don't know if other board members since Thursday night had spent time looking over the budget, trying to consider this 50,000. I do want to thank Dr. Freeman. I really did fail to acknowledge the really important work of the Board of Finance with regards to this budget, and the really thoughtful approach that the members of the Board of Finance took. Once again, the two meetings that we had with them during the kind of budget preparation and discussion always is very, I think, fruitful and valuable. It really provides them, I think, with a context of our budget, of the rationale for the decisions we are making in the budget. And again, I really want to echo Dr. Freeman's comments. It's just so clear how thoughtfully they think about the budget, our budget, and particularly how thoughtfully they approached their decision in terms of any reductions they made to both of the budgets this year. There was a great deal of discussion about how to go about it. Frequently, as the Board of Education's budget makes up essentially 2/3 of the entire budget when you include the town, it is with great frequency that a decision to make a reduction is divided in a 2/3, 1/3 approach. And there was purposeful discussion on Thursday's meeting about making it a 50-50 approach this year because of what students have gone through during this pandemic. So really a thoughtful approach, and I certainly thank them as well. So we do have Dr. Freeman's suggestion of how to make this $50,000 reduction. Are there other thoughts about this, other comments? I know in my reviewing the budget book, this does seem to be a reasonable approach to this $50,000 reduction. Because of how conservatively this budget was put together, I don't see another obvious place where this reduction should come from. And much like a number of the comments that we've heard via email, certainly over the last week, but public comments throughout this budget period, I am in full support of keeping the positions that were purposely put in here: the equity officer, the social worker, the student teacher, residency program supporting that, the IT specialist. Mr. Sands, I see your hand up. Go right ahead.
I agree with you, Dr. Tracy. I think this is the right place to make the reduction. And with this, we now have a completed budget, and one that I think is very, very fair.
All right. Other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I'm going to ask for a motion to following Board of Finance reduction of $50,000, that the Board of Education would take that $50,000 reduction from the retirement savings line which would move that line from an $80,000 reduction to a $130,000 reduction. Before I continue, I'm going to double check with Dr. Freeman. Am I making a motion for that reduction, or am I making a motion for the revised numbers that Mrs. Trudeau provided?
I think it's both, because the reduction identifies the line item, and
Okay,
then
that's what I thought.
and then because of the reduction, we have a new total budget number and a new percent increase.
And two motions, two votes, or one?
I think it's one motion,
Okay.
including all three of those numbers.
Okay, so I'm going to start again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. So I'm going to ask for a motion to reduce the Board of Education budget by the prescribed $50,000 from the Board of Finance, to take it from the line item of retirement savings. And thus, I am asking for a motion to approve a revised Board of Education budget in the amount of $62,395,900, which represents a 1.41% increase over the prior budget. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Sullivan, move that. Ms.
Second.
Rader, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? All right, no. So that is a unanimous vote. And then again, let me take the opportunity to thank Dr. Freeman, thank the district leadership team for all the work that went into this budget. Thank Mrs. Trudeau for all the work that went into adding all those budget lines together, and keeping us all continually informed. So this is really exciting. I just want to end by saying I am really excited about next year. I am excited to have our kids back in the building. I am excited about our ability to add to the mental health workers with a social worker that are going to help us make this transition with our students and our staff. I'm excited about things like the equity officer and the student teacher residency program. I think these are exciting initiatives in this budget that really represent some important work that we want to do. Any other thoughts before I move on to agenda item number 10? Yes, Mrs. Trudeau.
I just want to say that I will have a final 3-page summary out to you tomorrow, along with an updated salary schedule and the list of reductions that were taken over the budget process. So I'll be sending that out to each of you tomorrow.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, number 10, report on committees. Policy committee. I don't know if you have anything to add, Moira.
Nothing to add, just that our next meeting is April 26th.
Terrific. All right. Operations committee, Mr. Sands, anything to add? I know we met earlier this evening.
Well, just to say that we had a very thorough and informative presentation by the outside engineers, supported by the Standing Fields Committee and the Park and Rec people, along with Mr. Jarvis, who's our athletic director, with respect to the proposed rebuilding of the track and field, and with specific attention to alternatives that we might use as infill for the artificial turf field. And we had a very good report. A lot of work had been done in terms of visiting other facilities and talking to people about, what the maintenance requirements had been, and et cetera. So that project's going to go out to bid here fairly soon. And then we'll consider the alternatives against when we find out what the bid did say about the price of the various alternatives. But it was a very, very helpful presentation.
Agreed. Absolutely. Thank you. Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, is there any report tonight from that committee? Oh, Dr. Best, you're on mute.
Uh,
There you go.
No, we last met in January 25th. We had some guest lecturers, Dr. Seiler, Dr. Locke, who talked about their work with the administration and staff around culturally responsive teaching. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 22nd.
Wonderful. Thank you. Liaisons to town committees, anything relevant to the Board of Education? Okay, I hear nothing. Liaison to the Learn Board of Directors, have they met since we last met?
No, we haven't. The meeting is Thursday.
Okie dokie, wonderful. All right, item number 11, in lieu of public questions, as I do every meeting while we're in this remote setting, encourage any community member to reach out to any board member or to Dr. Freeman if you have questions, concerns, or comments. And then one last item before we adjourn. I was made aware by Ms. Vandella today that we have 3 upcoming union negotiations, dining services, nurses, and paraclerical. We typically like to have 3 board members on each negotiation. So if my math is correct, and I certainly hope it is, I am going to ask, unless someone has a problem time-wise, and these will all be starting sometime in the spring, I'm going to ask everyone to consider being part of one of those committees, one of those negotiation committees. Please reach out to me if there's a reason that is problematic for you this spring, because certainly we can adjust. But just note that that I'm going to be sending out an email requesting participation on one of those negotiation committees. And as we move forward, we'll hear about when those will start, but I am told sometime in the spring. All right, that concludes our meeting. Nice and short this evening. I thank everyone who joined us tonight, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Sullivan, Dr. Best, a second. All in favor? Aye. Wonderful. Good night, everyone. Thank you to everyone for all the work on the budget that brought us to this moment this evening. And I hope you have a wonderful week.
Thank you, everyone.